I was polishing the hood of my brand new Rolls-Royce, sunlight glinting off its deep black paint like a mirror, when I heard the shrill, unmistakable voice of my neighbor, Karen. She wasn't talking to me. She was on the phone, pacing furiously. On her porch, her eyes darting at my car as if it were some sort of intruder. At first, I thought she was gossiping like usual, until her words cut through the quiet afternoon like a knife. Yes, 911? There's a suspicious vehicle parked in front of my house. Some shady guy is just loitering around it. I think he might be dangerous. My stomach tightened. Shady guy? Dangerous? She was talking about me. My hands clenched around the microfiber. Cloth. Heat rising in my chest. She knew exactly who I was, my name, my house, everything. But instead of knocking on my door like a decent neighbor, she chose to weaponize the police against me. I stood frozen, heart pounding, torn between storming over to confront her and letting this absurd charade play out. What Karen didn't know, what made this entire scene almost laughable, was the one detail that would flip her smug little plan upside down. I am the police chief. For years, I had poured my life into public service, working long nights, missing holidays, and carrying the weight of an entire city's safety on my shoulders. So when I finally bought myself a Rolls-Royce, a gleaming symbol of decades of sacrifice, it wasn't about vanity. It was about validation. Every time I slid behind the wheel, I wasn't just driving a car, I was reminding myself that the years of stress, sleepless nights, and endless responsibility had been worth something. The neighborhood where I lived was the kind of place where manicured lawns stretched out in perfection, where gates clicked shut every evening with the quiet smugness of exclusivity, and where gossip traveled faster than the morning paper. It was supposed to be peaceful, a sanctuary after years on the job. But every paradise has a serpent, and ours wore designer sunglasses and a permanent scowl. Karen, the self-appointed queen of the HOA. She thrived on control, slipping violation, notices under doors, reporting teenagers for playing music too loud, and dictating how tall your grass could be. I had tolerated her antics, brushing them off as neighborhood politics, but the day my Rolls-Royce pulled into the driveway, I saw the disdain flash in her eyes. To her, it wasn't a car. It was a challenge, a disruption to the authority she thought she had. All I wanted was peace, to enjoy what I had earned. But Karen? Karen wanted war. It didn't take long before Karen's disdain for my car turned into a full-blown campaign against me. At first, it was subtle. Little sticky notes tucked under the wipers with passive-aggressive reminders about community standards, written in perfect cursive like she thought she was doing me a favor. Then came the sarcastic comments tossed over her shoulder whenever she saw me outside. Fancy wheels for such a quiet neighborhood. Hope it doesn't attract the wrong kind of attention. Her words dripped with condescension, and I could feel the sting of judgment in every syllable. Soon, she escalated to whisper campaigns. I'd noticed neighbors pausing their conversations when I walked by, their eyes darting to the rolls before quickly turning away. Rumors sprouted like weeds, claims that I wasn't the real owner of the car, that I must have been involved in shady business to afford it, that the vehicle was out of place among the more modest SUVs and minivans lining the cul-de-sac. Each lie felt like a stone being added to the pile pressing against my chest. The breaking point came one quiet afternoon when, as I was wiping down the hood, I caught Karen on her porch again, phone pressed tightly to her ear, her voice rising with manufactured panic. Yes, 911, there's a suspicious luxury vehicle, parked here again. The man doesn't look like he belongs. I think he could be dangerous. My blood ran cold. She wasn't just gossiping now, she was weaponizing fear, painting me as a criminal in my own driveway. As the wail of distant sirens grew closer, I felt a wave of humiliation wash over me, hot and suffocating. Neighbors peeked out from behind curtains and stepped onto lawns, murmuring, curious, eager to witness whatever drama was about to unfold. I stood there, fists clenched, the weight of their eyes pressing down on me. Powerless, cornered, and furious, I realized Karen wasn't just attacking my car. She was attacking my dignity, my identity, and everything I had worked for. The sound of sirens grew louder, echoing through the cul-de-sac like a war drum, and I could practically see the satisfaction radiating off Karen's face as she stood on her porch with her arms folded, lips curled into a smug grin. She thought she had won, that the flashing lights would expose me as some kind of fraud, that I'd be dragged away in front of the very neighbors she'd poisoned against me. When the squad car pulled up and 2 uniformed officers stepped out, the crowd of onlookers shifted with anticipation, phones already raised to capture the spectacle. For a brief moment, the officers didn't even see me. Their eyes scanned the rolls, their expressions serious. But then they looked up. Our gazes met, and recognition flashed instantly. I saw it in their startled eyes, the way their posture stiffened. They weren't staring at some suspicious loiterer. They were staring at their police chief. My badge wasn't on display, but my face was unforgettable to them. A man they'd stood shoulder to shoulder with at crime scenes. Someone whose orders they'd followed without hesitation. I gave them the smallest nod, silently telling them to play along, to let this charade breathe for just a moment longer. The irony was intoxicating. Karen, still oblivious, marched toward the officers with all the confidence of a prosecutor, her voice shrill with false concern as she pointed directly at me. "That's him! That's the man! He doesn't belong here! Look at that car! No one honest drives something like that!" The officers hesitated, torn between their duty and the absurdity of the situation. But I stood perfectly still, arms crossed, watching the theater unfold. The longer I let her dig her own grave, the sweeter the reveal would be. Karen strutted, closer, her finger stabbing the air in my direction as if she were pointing out a criminal on a wanted poster, her voice trembling with fake outrage. "Arrest him! He's been hanging around here for days, probably casing houses. And that car? No one in this neighborhood could possibly afford that legally." The crowd murmured in agreement, her venom seeping into their ears, and for a brief second, I let the weight of their judgment settle on me. Then, with a slow, deliberate movement, I reached into my jacket and pulled out my badge, the polished metal catching the daylight and glinting like a blade. The shift in atmosphere was instant. Neighbors' eyes widened, the officers stiffened, and Karen's words faltered mid-sentence as though her throat had closed. I held the badge up calmly, my voice steady but carrying the authority that years of command had forged. "Ma'am, you've just made a false 911 report. On your own police chief." Silence fell heavy over the street. Karen's face drained, of color, her mouth opening and closing in a series of stammers that went nowhere. One officer coughed awkwardly into his hand to hide a smirk, while the other shifted uncomfortably, fighting the urge to laugh outright. Karen tried to backpedal, waving her hands as if to erase her own words. I didn't know. I was just concerned for the safety of the neighborhood." But it was too late. The power she had wielded so recklessly had flipped back onto her, crushing her pride in front of the very audience she sought to impress. For once, I didn't need to raise my voice. The truth itself had done the work. The silence that followed was heavier than any siren or accusation, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt the weight lift from my shoulders. Karen stood frozen on the spot, her face pale, her confidence shattered, and the neighbors who had once whispered against me now looked at me with something different in their eyes. Respect, even a little shame. The Rolls-Royce gleamed in the afternoon sun, no longer a target of suspicion, but a gleaming reminder that hard work and integrity can't be tarnished by envy. One of the officers, struggling to maintain his composure, gave me a discreet nod, of acknowledgement before stepping back, signaling to everyone that the matter was over. I didn't have to humiliate Karen further. She had done that to herself, her own arrogance painting her into a corner she couldn't escape. As I slid the badge back into my pocket, I felt a rush of calm, a release of the anger and humiliation that had been festering. Justice didn't always require handcuffs or citations. Sometimes it only required truth revealed at the right moment. Karen learned that day that authority is not hers to wield recklessly, and the community learned that respect is earned, not demanded. For me, the Rolls wasn't just a car anymore. It was a symbol of resilience, of refusing to bow under false judgment. And as I stepped inside my home, I carried with me the sweet relief of knowing that, this time, dignity had triumphed over pettiness. So, if this story made you clench your fists, laugh out loud, or just feel that sweet rush of justice when arrogance finally collapsed under the weight of truth, then do me a favor. Hit that like button right now. It may seem small, but it tells me you want more stories where the underdog rises, the bullies fall, and karma delivers its knockout punch. And I want to hear from you too. What would you have done in my shoes? Would you have revealed your badge immediately, or let Karen dig herself deeper into that pit she built? Drop your thoughts down in the comments. I read every single one. And your take might even inspire a future story on this channel. And if you're new here, don't just watch and disappear. Subscribe and join a community of people who know the thrill of seeing justice served in the most satisfying way possible. Because trust me, Karen isn't the only one who's tried to test their luck against the wrong person. This was just one battle. But there are plenty more HOA nightmares, property disputes, and power struggles waiting to unfold. And you're not going to want to miss what comes next.